I got into the medical marijuana movement and began a collective 25 years after I began cultivating and using cannabis. I did it because I believed there was a law that protected me. Otherwise, I wouldn't have done it. I would have just kept doing what I was doing and probably would have never had any troubles. 10 years after the law was passed, I really believed that it existed, it was real, and if I did things a certain way, I'd be protected by it. And then I got arrested. And then I got charged with felonies. And I didn't know where to go. I didn't know who to talk to. So I went to some of the activist groups, some of the advocate groups, and I came to a Mapp meeting, and somebody told me, you got to go meet Lanny and Ronnie and all these guys. And Lanny was gracious enough way back then to let me get up and tell my story. And at the time, I was like, I felt like I was Paul Revere running down the road on my horse going, you guys don't understand. You're not protected. You're not protected. And that was before, I had gone through this whole justice system, the first case. And, that was kind of my mission, was to warn everybody. And I didn't know what I was doing. I've never been a public speaker. I've never been involved with this kind of activism. I've always been an activist for human rights and for things that are right. But this was always my personal thing. My choice. Nobody messed with me. I never had a problem with it. Didn't have to fight for it. No reason to. And Lanny let me get up here and talk. And it was, I think, at the same time that Ronnie Knowles was up here. And I come to find out there's more than just me that was going through this. And from that time till now, of course, I've been involved with, I don't know if I've hit 100 yet, but definitely dozens of defendants that have gone through similar problems, both state, federal, local, every which way there is to get in trouble. I've met people that have gone through it. And that takes me all the way up to today, where 2 weeks ago I was in the Twin Towers Correctional Institute, where my bail was revoked after I got pulled over, possessing a lawful amount of cannabis, illegally searched and seized, not given a ticket, not arrested, and what they did was they turned over the videotape of this to the Long Beach DA, which is where my case currently is, and they were able to get it in front of a judge and say, see, he's up to his tricks again, we want him in jail. And the judge said, sure, no problem. And it took me more than almost 6 weeks to get out of it, and it ultimately costs a dear friend a whole lot of money. And I'm currently over $30,000 in debt just for bail. I'm not talking about legal fees. I'm over $100,000 in debt through this whole thing, over legal fees, the cost of going to court, all of this stuff together. All for what? Okay? For those of you who don't know my story, I'm going to take a step back and go through it really quickly. But I wanted to initially just talk about this whole process. Okay? We're all here today essentially about cannabis, but really we're here about freedom. We talk about no more drug war. We're talking about, free the weed. We talk about ending prohibition. Okay, that's why we're really here. That civil rights movement that we started, that they started before I was born, is still carrying on. It's taken on a different face, but it went from blacks to gays to now drugs, and it just keeps changing its face. But there's plenty of people out here that are recognized, liberty, justice, the things that our founding fathers fought for. Well, we're still fighting for it, and we haven't won yet. But, like Lanny was talking about, I was sitting there listening to him, and I was just thinking to myself, wow, they were right. When I was in jail and through this whole 4 years of a nightmare, you just don't feel like we're winning. You don't feel like we're making any progress at all. I keep meeting more people that are getting raided and beat up and thrown in jail and charged and having to pay exorbitant fees and bails and everything. And yet, just watch Lanny for 30, 40 minutes talk about conferences and victories and legal states and having discussions of studies. Now, if we think about this, the whole prohibition came out of like what we were talking about, lies, lies, and lies. And then cover-ups on top of that. So first they came and lied to all the people, and then they held back all the real information. And that's what it's been from then till now. What's the answer? Education. The truth. And that's what we're doing. These meetings like this, to me, these are the tavern meetings from back in the Revolutionary War days. We're meeting, we're discussing the problems, we're figuring out what can we do to solve it. Okay? So for me to sit here and listen to all these positive things, and then on top of it, that we've got, I personally know more than 4 people that have run for office in not only California legislation, but in Congress. And I've helped in campaigns. They were all people that were for the ending of prohibition, for ending the drug war, for legalizing cannabis. Okay? 20 years ago, 30 years ago, where was that? There wasn't. So we're making tremendous progress. Okay? That's the good news. The bad news is, as we get closer and closer to this, just like what Lanny was saying, they're scared to death that we're going to win. Where's the money going to come from? Who's going to pay for it? And so what are they doing? They're reaching out hard. And they're hitting people. It doesn't make the news. You don't hear about the raids. It doesn't ever make, unless it's a real big one, some other things were involved, because they love that. They love to put other things involved. Oh, there was coke, or there was guns, or there was something else. So everybody goes, ooh, it was scary. Okay? Most of the cases, they're not. Plenty of cases, just backyard grows. Plenty of cases, people that were acting in compliance with California law. But ultimately, that doesn't matter. 4 years ago, I came out here and I had my first conversation. And I hope to God, someday, I can come out here and talk about something else. I can't wait for the day when I can talk about, CO2 extraction, standardization, terpenes, flavonoids, and organic cultivation techniques, because I would just love to do that. But unfortunately, I have to talk about elephants. And you say, what the hell are you talking about? Elephants. The elephants that are in every freaking room in America that nobody's talking about. Okay? These are big, giant, friggin' furry, slobbery, gross elephants that want to just sneeze all over you. And they do. And we get sneezed on, we don't do anything about it. I have an ulterior motive for being here. Okay? When I first came out here and started speaking, I realized that people don't know that there's a problem. And I've spoke every chance I got ever since then to tell people that there's a problem. Well, there's also a solution. Okay? And that's why I'm here today. And that's why I'm here, every chance I get. Every morning I wake up and I say, what can I do to help end prohibition? I really do, every single day. And I think to myself, well, Lanny's probably already doing this, but maybe there's something I can do more than he's doing. Mentally, I compete with him every single day, but I pale. I don't even have a chance, but it doesn't matter. I still fight on every day. So, if you think about this, we're in a war. People don't like to talk about war. It's another big elephant in the room. But it really is. Mm-hmm. This is a war. Okay? And there's 2 sides to the war. There's 2 armies. There really is. And there's one side of the war that has guns. They got all the money they want. They get paid for being there. Think about it. The people that take our stuff, take our freedom, put us in jail, all of these things, they get paid for doing everything they do. And then the other side is us, who has to pay for it. We pay with our time, we pay with our money. All of our witnesses have to pay. Everybody. You go to court, all the witnesses are cops. They're in there getting paid. The judges get paid. The prosecutor gets paid. Even the public defender gets paid. Everybody involved. Okay? So they've got this war stacked against us. Okay? And it spills into, one of these elephants is our whole justice system. How many of you believe, really, that you are innocent until proven guilty in a court of law? I mean, really, seriously, raise your hand if you think that's true. You really think you're innocent until proven guilty?
Yeah.
Have you ever been in a trial? Have you?
So that's what I have to think.
Okay, you have to think that, because it's your job, okay? But if you've sat in a trial, been a defendant, or watched a criminal trial, it's not that way, okay? I've watched juries get picked, and it's the scariest thing in the world, because juries believe, as a rule, that you wouldn't be there unless they had something on you. So you start with the odds stacked against you. How many of you realize that for the purposes of bail, you are considered guilty. So what does that do? That gives them a chance to stack the charges on you. They might drop them later, but that's how they get you. Okay? They got hit me with a $125,000 bail and then a $250,000 bail. Okay? Why? Because they can just say he did it. For those purposes, I'm guilty. They set the bail accordingly. That's how that works. Okay? So that's one army. Okay? They got a lot of people. They got all the money. They got all the guns. They got the jails. They got the judges. They got the prosecutors. They got a whole infrastructure in place to take our stuff, take our freedom, and ultimately, what's the biggest thing they do? They scare us. Fear is our biggest enemy because people are afraid. I'm afraid. And I'm not afraid of anything. But now I hear a helicopter going over my head and my heart starts pounding. I hear a car come up my driveway and my heart starts pounding until I find out that it's not a cop with a bunch of guns. You know, and it shouldn't be that way. But it is. We watch our friends. Just about everybody in this room either has been or knows somebody that's been arrested for pot. Okay? And too many of us have been through the justice system. Too many of us have felt it. Not just heard about it, not read about it, but felt it. What they do to you. The dehumanizing, hobbling, you know, they literally just take what they want. Okay? So we're afraid. We act different. We don't stand up for everything. When the fire comes, there's two kinds of people, the ones that run from it and the ones that run to it. Okay, well, I'm fortunate enough to know a lot of people that run to it. And that's what I'm here to do, is to hopefully find some kind of a language to get you, everybody in this room, to realize that it's important enough to run to the fire. Okay? We have the numbers. The people in America that enjoy cannabis, whether it's for recreational, medicinal, or necessity, far outnumber those people that are trying to put us in jail by probably thousands to one. So why haven't we won already?
Money.
They have the money, they have the guns, and they scare the crap out of us. And we're lazy, okay? I mean, you put all those things together, and that's why, ultimately, we haven't made the changes. But we're making them, little by little. Okay? I firmly believe the genie's out of the bottle. There's 18 states in D.C. that have already said, you know what, enough, medical's okay. 2 states have said, enough, this is ridiculous, it's only pot. And now, we have more and more people running for office. So now it's up to us. We've got to get behind these people. We've got to research. We've got to be smart. We've got to learn what candidates are standing for and not standing for. If you really spend your time looking at candidates, you'll find oftentimes it's a third party. Oftentimes it's somebody that doesn't have a lot of money behind them. But you'll find that there are candidates that support us. But what do? We re-elect the incumbent over and over again. But we don't have to. Okay? How many of you in this room believe that you can make a difference in ending the war on drugs?
Yep.
Most of us. That's good. The rest of you should, because you can. There's a million ways that you can make a difference. Just showing up to a meeting like this is a start. You're going to learn something you probably didn't know before. You're going to talk to somebody about something that maybe you didn't know or you didn't want to talk about. You're going to find out somebody else is doing something that maybe you can get behind. Okay, but we can make a difference. We can make a difference by participating in the political process. We can make a difference by writing a letter on a defendant's behalf. We can make a difference by showing up in court. You can make a difference by deciding to fight your case instead of taking a plea deal. Okay? There's a million ways to make a difference. I challenge every single person in this room to decide to pick one. Maybe one more than you were doing before. Okay? Everybody's probably doing something, but maybe decide to do one more.
Another thing is, just like Joe said about the voir dire process where they pick the jury. A lot of us spend a lot of time getting out of jury duty, but Abraham Lincoln said jury duty is one of the highest duties that we have, being judged by a jury of your peers. It's like what's happening here in the city of Riverside. They're taking a lot of the black people off the juries when the defendant is black or brown.
Yeah, they do.
And so you're not being tried by a jury of the peers and stuff. Sometimes you have to push back. Some of us are thinking about filing a federal class action against the city of Riverside and taking over the district attorney's office like we did when the police department shot Taisha Miller so many years ago in the 90s. So we have avenues, if we aren't lazy, like Joe says, and get together and organize. You think about what a couple of days of jury duty is going to do as opposed to a guy who's going to have his whole life ruined or locked up, but not having a real jury of his peers or people that understand that marijuana is not just for the hell of it, it's for the wellness, the medicinal aspect.
Well, this guy just went and stole my thunder. You took my secret weapon away from me. Okay, and you know what? You're just absolutely right. That was one of the key points I wanted to make here. And I talk about every single one of us can make a difference. The power of one. One person can change the world. As a juror, you have the same power as the governor of the state that you're in. You have the same power as the president. How is that? You have the power to literally pardon a man who might be considered guilty under the law. If you got picked on a federal jury, okay, and you had the stones to stand up to the rest of the jury, no matter what, if you held your ground and said, no, not guilty. I don't care if federal law says possessing a joint is illegal and possessing 50 plants means you have to be in prison for 5 years minimum. Knowing that, as a juror, you have a right without any fear of any punishment or recourse at all. There's nothing they can do to you for saying, no, I'm sorry. I'm not going to convict that person. Okay? It's called jury veto. It's called jury nullification. And it's something that is slowly being talked about. Okay? In state court, you shouldn't have to use that. You should be able to say, no, the law allows this. I'm sorry, he's not guilty. Okay? But here's the problem. And I've sat in, again, way too many trials. I've watched way too many juries get picked. And here's what happens. The Paul Chabots of the world come up through the jury process. They fill out their little questionnaires. And the judge will say, is there anybody here who cannot be fair for any reason? And they sit quietly and don't say anything. And then over time they go and they start asking the voir dire process, they start asking the jurors questions. And they ask you about if you've ever been arrested, or what your kind of work is, or if you've ever known a family member that's been beat up by a cop, or whatever that goes through. And they sit quietly and say, nope, 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 I'm good. And then they ask, is there anything that would keep you from being fair? And they say, nope, and they get put up forward. Okay? We, on the other hand, and I say we as people that support the personal choice to use cannabis, whether it's medicinal, recreational, or whatever, we go up there and we say, well, I'm a medical marijuana patient. We go up there and we say, I just think that law is bad and I just couldn't convict somebody. We say, I'd have a hard time being fair because it's only pot. We do that. I watch it over and over again. And out of a jury panel of 100 people, 50 people, whatever it is, every single one of us that should be our ringer gets thrown off. And we don't even get thrown off with a preemptory choice, which both sides get a certain amount that they can throw off. They get thrown off for cause, which means the judge says, oh no, he can't be fair. So they're freebies. We throw ourselves up there and say, I can't be fair. Okay? We need to learn to do the same thing that the other guys do. Rule number one, just like the cops, shut the hell up. Okay, really? You can be fair and not say I'm a medical marijuana patient. There's nothing not fair about that.
Do they ask you if you are?
Most of the time they don't. In most of the jury questionnaires I've seen, they don't ask if you are a medical patient. Oftentimes they'll ask if you've ever used marijuana. That's not necessarily a throw-off. Okay? I'm not saying to lie per se, but knowing this, that cops will lie on the stand, prosecutors will lie, their witnesses will lie, and they'll do whatever it takes to get you convicted. I'm not saying to lie, but if you were to do that, I'm saying you could still be fair. Okay? At the end of the day, that's our power. And if just one of us was on Aaron Sandusky's jury, he wouldn't be facing 10 years to life on Monday.
Right.
Okay? That's where he's going to be. And for the next 10 years, unless he ends up, copping some kind of a deal after conviction, which is possible.
And one of the potential juries on Aaron's trial stood up and said, I have a problem if the federal government is prosecuting him for following state law, and he was off.
Well, there was 12 or 13 jurors in that jury pool that were thrown off for one reason or another that had, were patients or whatnot, okay? And we even had a ringer in there. There was one juror who was a patient who held out for 4 counts, but convicted him on 2. And that's one of the reasons that they hit you with so many counts, because in federal especially, Aaron ran a collective. He had a big grow operation. He had more than 1,000 plants. Guess what? Federal mandatory minimums, 10 years to life. Okay, that's what he's dealing with. On Monday at 8:30 in Los Angeles Federal Court Building, they're going to be sentencing him.
Spring Street.
And I would encourage anybody who's able to come. When I talk about court support all the time, I beg, bribe, coerce, whatever I can do to get people to come to court. Okay, and most of the time it's selfish. I want you to come to support me or another defendant. Okay, but the other side of that coin is everybody that goes comes back a changed person. Okay, when you see what really happens in court, it's not what you think. Every single time people come new to court, they come back to me and they go, they can't do that. How did they do that? Well, they do. And it's up to us to make changes. It's up to us to make changes in the legislation. It's up to us to make changes on every level of this. Roy.
There's also a White House petition circulating to pardon Aaron Sandusky. It's at about 5,000 signatures now. It needs another 20,000. So if you haven't signed it, I urge everybody to go online, look it up. You have to register onto the White House thing to post it, but it's worth it. Please do it. Tell your friends.
Well, we're also asking people to write letters. There's a couple of times in a trial situation where the public can particularly be helpful, and at the sentencing phase is a time when a judge is more or less has to look at the community's support. At Ronnie Nall's sentencing hearing, we showed up in force and filled the courtroom. Literally, the courtroom was full. And the judge looked at us and she said, you know what, I think I need to give this a little more time. And she continued the case for 2 more weeks. And I really believe that we had an impact in that. And I think she was planning on sentencing him harsher than she ultimately did. And she gave him a sentence that he was able to get through. And, we ended up having to raise a bunch of money and wear dresses to fix him. But we did. And at the end of the day, he didn't have to go to prison. And at the end of the day, he's in law school and, working to fight this. This is a dark side of an amazing journey. We're making history right now, but there is this really dark side to this. And unfortunately, I don't get invited to speak at the big conferences because my message is not a happy one. And people don't want to hear the grim darkness about these slobbery elephants in the room that are trying to take all our shit and beat us up, okay? But it's an important side. It is a real side. It's a side that affects us all, whether you know somebody today or not. You know somebody who knows somebody, I guarantee. I'm going to give a brief update on my case, and then I'll take questions if you guys have any more. I've been fighting this case I'm in 4 years now, okay? This started, I opened up a collective, and in compliance with California law to the very best of my ability, I consulted attorneys, did everything I could. Always with our mission was, we had meetings every day on how to be compliant, to make sure we were being compliant. I ultimately got arrested while I was transporting the cannabis to a safe place. That's when I got my eyes opened and, became an activist in this arena. After 11 months of fighting this, I got a judge and a prosecutor to agree that I was following California law. And I got my case dismissed right before we started trial, and the judge granted an order that said I was in full compliance with California law, and not only that, but he was going to give me back my property and my money, everything, make me whole, okay? I received that piece of paper, and I believed, this is a California Superior Court justice, the same league of judge that's currently trying to put me in jail, okay? I had this piece of paper. A judge says, you are compliant under California law. So I wore that thing like a badge. I paraded it around. I hung it in my collective. And it says, our collective is completely compliant under California law. The judge said so. 5 weeks later, I'm raided. And all this nightmare began. Okay. Went through a whole, well, originally they offered me a deal. Their first deal to me was no jail, 3 years probation, felony. Okay? So, knowing that, I have chosen this battle, because I didn't have to go to jail. I could have taken their deal. I could have taken their deal and shut up and gone away and just went back to painting houses and doing what it was I was doing and just be a good boy, don't get in trouble anymore for 3 years, and it's all over. Okay? But that's not why I got into this. I got into this because I believed the law said you can do this. So if I'm following the law, why do I have to be a felon? Why do I have to go through this? I says no. At that moment, I was all in. Okay? Well, this is another one of these elephants in the room, but when you stand up to the justice system, they don't like it. Okay? Long Beach in particular, but Los Angeles County has a 97% conviction rate. You know why that is? Because 88% of the people take plea deals. Okay, and then 50% of that gets convicted and 50% doesn't, of the rest of it. Okay, but that's how it works. 87% of defendants take plea deals. Okay, so they don't even have to fight. They don't have to do anything. Well, when you decide to stand up to it and take it to the box, they don't like that at all. Number one, they got to work for their money. They got to put a case on. Okay, but you know, basically it's a slap in their face. And they hit me after that. They filed all these charges that allowed them to put this big bail that I had to come up with. And then we went through this whole case. They played dirty from day one. They filed a motion to deny my medical defense. Okay? At the end of trial, or once I got into trial, they stipulated I was a qualified patient. Okay? They were willing to say, no, you don't get a defense. But once I won the defense in the appellate court, they says, well, we're going to just agree that he's a patient. So that just lets you know that's what they're willing to do. They're willing to stretch things. They brought up a lead detective that testified on the stand. I lie through my teeth. Those were his words. Okay? They had a key witness that had full immunity, testified under oath, things that were full lies, bold-faced lies. Their case was built on lies. Okay? But they were able to, through this judge being completely, I mean, it was a science fiction movie in the worst possible way. You wouldn't believe it if you read it, okay? One day you will. I'm telling the story as I go. But I got convicted. Got convicted of 12 counts of selling pot, okay? All the way through this, I've been outspoken. I've been talking about what's going on. I've been shooting videos. Hell, Katrina shot 100 videos during this whole process. Put them up on YouTube. Letting people know what's going on. You know, that this is what's really happening here. This is the reality of our justice system. They turned around and used one of the videos I did after I got convicted to try to get me a bigger sentence because the prosecutor claimed I was being defiant and not remorseful. When all I was doing was saying, I'm righteous. I didn't do anything wrong. I shouldn't have been convicted for this. And that's all I was saying. Okay? So through all of this, in a miracle of everybody watching and putting out sworn statements of what they saw, I ended up getting a new trial. Okay, so all of a sudden I've got this chance at a fair trial. Fair trial, I should walk on this piece of cake, right? Well, we get to hang on one second. I'm moving forward. Okay, now I'm broke though. I've got a public defender. I don't have a paid attorney anymore. I'm all out. I got no more money. I've done all the fundraising. Everybody I know is giving all they can give. I mean, I've squeezed you guys hard, and everybody's ponied up. But I mean, I can only, keep squeezing for so long. And so I've got a public defender, and the prosecution decides they want to spend even more of your tax dollars, and they say we want to go to the appellate court. We want to contest that ruling for me to get a new trial. Okay. So now the state's paying for the prosecutor. The state's paying for my public defender. Now the state's paying for the special prosecutor's appellate team. And now the state's paying for a state-appointed appellate lawyer on my behalf, on top of the judges and everything else. I mean, they're just racking up your tax dollars. We've estimated they're coming up on $3 million of what they've spent of your tax dollars to put me in jail. Now, deep dark secret, I am a scary monster. Okay, I am to be feared. All right, because they sure do. All right, so just know that. All the rest of you guys are fine, but I am the scary one. From that point, we're going through this whole process. I got pulled over, went through this nonsense. I get put in jail, and 6 weeks later, I get released, and here I am waiting for a decision to be made in the appellate court, and then I get to go through it all over again. Okay, Roy.
You forgot to mention, I think it's important that the reason you were found guilty in the first trial, but the judge had to recuse himself for showing such obvious bias throughout the entire trial.
Yeah, that was, everything that happened in this case was stuff that never happened, so sometimes I even forget. But yeah, ultimately, I walked into sentencing expecting I was going to get taken away to prison. And so I got myself a little medicated because I figured if I was going to have to be processed in, I wanted to slide on into it. So I was just sort of floating on in there thinking, okay, let's see what's going to happen. And all of a sudden the judge goes, I screwed up, I got to step down. I was like, what? It was wonderful, don't get me wrong. But, this whole case has been a nightmare. It's been completely things that don't happen. And it boils down to, I'm fighting for our freedom, and they don't like that. And Aaron was the same way. He vocally stood up against things that were wrong, and they don't like that. And if you look at the cases and you do a little bit of background information on defendants that actually are gone after hard, usually these are people that have spoken out, been a little bit vocal, didn't back down, and they just don't like it. So hopefully I'm going to have this thing behind me by the end of the year. We're starting off the year good. I started off the year free, and I'm hoping to remain that way. I'm hoping to never again have handcuffs put on my hands, and I hope that none of you guys do either. And so I'm encouraging everybody to make a decision today to do maybe something a little bit more than you were doing yesterday to help us in prohibition. Thank you very much.
Hey Joe, one question, there's a lot of misinformation out there. People doing that on purpose.
Yeah.
When you got pulled over, the amount of weed you had on you, that fell under your patient?
I was allowed to carry the amount that I had with me under SB 420 and California Prop 250, but under SB 420 specifically, I had a legal amount, yes.
Okay. So the other people are getting all the crap out there. People were saying that, oh, well, Joe told the police that the weed he had on him, he was taking to pay his lawyer with the weed.
Yeah. People said a lot of things, and they didn't hear the whole story. Unfortunately, in our own community, we're the worst gossips in the world. We all are guilty of the telephone game. And every time I hear from other people what they heard happened through this whole case, it's been wrong 98% of the time. So I try to keep telling the story over and over again, clearly and accurately, and I'm sorry I was there. I know what happened. And yeah, absolutely.
Did you think you were profiled when you were pulled over? What was the problem?
From what I understand, that corridor I was going through is a place where they do regular sweeps, and there was, when I was driving through, I saw no less than 7 cops, undercover and marked cops, right there at the 111 where it splits off, the 10 and the 111.
You mean the Palm Springs?
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
They pulled him over because the cop said that his dog smelled the weed in his truck with all the.
Well, he told me when he pulled me over that I had a light lens that was loose, but he had a dog that was barking. Yeah, and so, anyways, you had a question.
How far are you in your appeals process?
Well, this is my second round with the appellate court. The first round, they denied my defense. We filed a writ prior to trial, which never gets granted, and they actually granted my defense prior to trial. Now this time, they're appealing my motion being granted for a new trial. So they're trying to reclaim their conviction. And so my appellate attorney is very confident that we're going to win this. I have a 3,000-page transcript of nightmares, and there's over 30 points at which the judge showed overt bias, and it just crazy things. My attorney called for a mistrial 4 times during the trial. I mean, constitutional grounds. I mean, it was nuts. And if you had sat through it, every day you would have protested with the rest of us. We had an 18-day protest out in front of that courthouse because of the nightmare that was happening. And fortunately, people were willing to get out there and do that because it at least made the difference.
Are you looking to countersue?
You know, that's a funny thing about countersuing. I'm not sure. You know, I'm out of money. So, you know, either I'm actually preparing to represent myself pro se because I don't know if my public defender is going to do the job or not. So I have the transcript from the last trial that I'm studying right now, and I'm preparing my own case, preparing my own opening statements. I'm preparing, if I have to represent myself because public defenders don't always do what you want them to.
Sometimes it's better to defend yourself.
Sometimes it is, and I'm prepared. Not prepared yet, but I'm preparing myself to do just that. And you know, it's scarier than hell because, you know, I don't know the right ways to object. I don't know the right ways to do things, but I do know this. I know I'm not guilty. Okay. And if I can convince a jury of that, you know, hopefully I can be free and have this thing behind me. That's what I'm banking on.
Maybe one thing you might want to consider is having the attorney, public defender, assist you where he'll do the civil procedure aspects, like the rules part, and you'll do the argument, whereas your sincerity may come through with the jury or not.
Right.
Then they can kind of see some of the
yeah, from what I understand, if I go pro se, I'm allowed to have an attorney be co-counsel.
Yeah.
And so I'm researching that right now, and kind of it's one more thing to learn. I wish I could just, like, you know, be done with this and get back to life, but instead I get to be a legal expert or whatever it is that I've become. But you know, at the end of the day, I'm helping people that don't know anything with the experience I have. And I'm personally responsible for more than 20 defendants taking their case to trial. And I know this for a fact because of our conversations, and many of them ended up successful. You know, and it's just something that if we were to all do this, if every marijuana case said, I'm going to trial, and not only that, but don't waive my right to a speedy trial, we would flood the courtrooms, and the juries would have to see this, and at one point we would start getting juries of our peers. Even though we're not getting it now, there's really only 1 out of 100 cases that actually go to trial. And if we were to keep fighting them, I guarantee you at one point this would be another front of the war that would help us to win it.
The case that the judge said that you were in compliance and doing everything the way you should and dismissed everything, was that in LA too? Or?
No, it was in Riverside County, but it's still California Superior Court, and the judge wouldn't allow me to present that as evidence. They wouldn't let me present anything, yeah.
Joe, is that because he dismissed it and it's not a not guilty plea, so it's not double?
You know what? They didn't let me present most of my defense, so it was just one more thing they didn't let me do. I can't point it out as anything. So I mean, yeah, it was definitely just one more crooked thing they did. Well, Eddie, I want to really thank you again. You just are. One day I would love to come out here and talk about something else. Yeah.